What the fuck? I still have the plastic cow transition. Get that shit out of here. Go. 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 There you go. Damn it. Silly me, oh no. Uh-oh, look what I did. I diddly done fucked it up. It's alright. It's alright, I can fix that. How are you doing? Thank you so much for coming to see me today. I am feeling great. I'm having a lovely day. And I've got a very, very exciting story to tell you. It's a good start. It is a good start. It is a good start. Reminds you of a good stream, right? No worries there. What was I going to do? I opened the... Oh no, it's all over the place now. I don't know where I am. Who are you? What are you doing in my house? You're not in my house. You're watching a YouTube video. Lol. Anyway. Got a very exciting story to tell you all today. Thank you very much for your support already. So, what many of you may know, as I've said it before, but what some of you may have not heard before, Vox Akuma is not technically my real given birth name. I like the name very much, and it's what I call myself. You call me Vox. My friends call me Vox, and my family calls me Vox. But Vox, like I said, is not my real name. Vox Akuma, meaning literally voice demon, was a name given to me. And before, I've told you that it was given to me as a sort of folkloric moniker, that people who had heard of me would call me in a hushed, frightful tone. Beware the voice demon. And I quite liked it. But today, I'll be telling you the story of how I came to hear that name for the first time. And before you ask, I don't know what my real name actually is. My parents know it, and they have alluded to the fact that they know it with smug smiles. I've asked them many times to tell me, and all they've ever said is that they'll tell me, well, not that they'll tell me, somehow they've told me that when I'm ready, I will know it. I don't know what they mean by that. I have no idea what to expect from that, but perhaps one day it will just magically occur to me and I'll go, oh. But you never know, and neither do I. But that's not what we're talking about today. I wish it was. I wish I knew. It'd be nice to know. But for now, Christ alive. Hope that doesn't mean what I think it means. I highly doubt that my normal name is like fucking Kyle or something. Steve. Steve Akuma. No. But today, I'll be telling you a very interesting story of how I got the name Vox Akuma. This is the story specifically of how I heard it for the very first time. So, sit back, relax, get yourself your favorite beverage. If you are planning on getting some sleep, just listen to my voice and you can see where we plan on going. But, as is the case, I can't promise that you'll be able to stay asleep. Listen with caution, although this one is, in the grand scheme of things, I think this one is quite funny, let's say. At least in my sort of way. I've got some tea. Okay. So, this is quite an old story This predates the story I told about meeting Onigiri, and it predates my story about Uesugi Kenshin, because I already knew that I was Vox Akuma by the time I had met him. This takes place in around 1555, around about 5 years before Kenshin and I met. And at the time, I went through a pattern. My life was a cycle. I would run out of money and food. I would prey on bandits in order to become more powerful and build myself up, and I would steal their money, spend that money, and then I would move on before more people than I could handle would come and try to take me down. In this case, however, a daimyo had gotten very upset with me for killing one of his favorite servants, and he was very persistent, so I ended up all the way down in Kyushu. I settled down in a port town, and I tried my very best to blend in. As I did blend in quite well there with my quite strange features, I spent quite a bit of time in the pleasure district. Lots of people would come and go, and there were plenty of men who had lots and lots of money that wouldn't be missed. So I started going to one place in particular where the star attraction was this lady called Kiku. She had a few regulars, but there was one old man in particular who stopped in every week or so. And it turned out he was a pirate lord called Kinjo. Insanely rich and very, very powerful. Now I planned to just stay out of his way, and I thought, in that case, everything would be fine. It had been before. Why would that change now? So one day, I was drinking in the tea house, and I heard Kinjo arrive. And a few minutes later, one of his servants walked in, a guy called Shotaro. He got drunk immediately, and he started terrorizing everybody. He ran around, grabbing people's drinks out of their hands, telling them to get out. I want the girls for myself. I couldn't stand him, as you can imagine, and he was getting very, very comfortable on this day in particular. Sat in a corner with a drink that they had just poured, and I was really, really pissed that I couldn't just walk up and kill him myself. But I was the voice demon, even if they didn't call me that quite yet. So, Shotaro started grabbing me and asking if I had heard him. He was harassing me. I didn't even look up. I stayed where I was, got very quiet, and I said, "Be nice." Now, you see, the thing about my voice, as I've told you, it works on some people differently than it does on others. It's not really a particular form of mind control. It is a powerful suggestion. This guy, however, being drunk and not the smartest person, even when sober, it worked on him surprisingly well. I focused my whole attention on him, and he was right in my face. It was essentially a nat 20, a crit. He instantly stopped yelling. He started running around cleaning up his mess. It worked incredibly well, so well in fact, that I got a little bit carried away, and I told him to compensate the ladies and the clients he scared off, and Shotaro dug a load of money out and gave them all a week's pay. It was a very good time. I had a laugh and shared a laugh with everyone else. But, unfortunately, this is why for a while after I tried my best to keep these powers at a certain low level, word started to spread faster than I was used to. The next day, Kinjo, the pirate lord, and all of his men left, and I came back to check on things. The women still didn't exactly know what happened, but they were happy. They were happy to be left alone. I was having a chat with some of them when a little girl ran up and passed me a note. She was Kiku's attendant, and the note said that Kiku wanted to see me. I almost said no. I thought it was too good to be true. I thought, no, maybe she's heard about me, wanted to see me off the clock, but And that was a huge risk, you know. Courtesans usually aren't supposed to see anyone for fun. Perhaps it was Shortturtle just playing a joke, setting a trap for me. But the note was real, and I thought, well, she's a smart lady. She'd know if it was safe or not. Worst case scenario, I'd fight my way out like I always do, and just move on to the next town. Like I always do. So I followed what the note said, waited till dark, and snuck around the back. Someone waved at me from a window, and so I climbed the fence, got up on the roof, and went in after them. Alas, when I got in, Kiku wasn't there. Kinjo was waiting for me. I immediately thought it was a setup, and I got ready to run. But no, Kinjo just sat there. He poured me a drink and invited me to sit down. I was curious, so I did sit. And I said, "Good evening, Kiku. You look lovely." Kinjo laughed, and he said, "You're a smooth talker, all right." There were another couple of men in the next room, but they were just bodyguards. This guy had obviously gone to a lot of trouble to talk to me in private, so I wasn't terribly worried. I felt all right. And sure enough, Kinjo said, "Let's not waste any time. I've got an offer for you. Someone stole from us, and we need help dealing with them." I was a little dubious, as you can imagine. I asked, well, how am I supposed to help you, as opposed to the thousands of men you've already got? "I haven't got thousands of you," he said. "I heard what happened from one of the boys downstairs. Shortturtle was raising hell again, and all you did was talk at him, and he stopped. I know that little fucker, and nobody just tells him to shut up and hand his money over." And he leaned in and he stared me right in the eye. "You're not human, are you?" His voice got quiet. "The demon of the mountains?" He didn't seem scared. He was actually kind of happy about it. I gave it a think. And then I said, "Your thief isn't human, then? A demon or some kind of yokai?" "A water yokai. It stole from some of my men out at sea. The thing got back in the water too quick to catch it, and it taunted us about taking the treasure home with it. We've no idea where it went, and even if we did, we can't go looking at the bottom of the ocean." I could read humans pretty well, and this was obviously very important to them. "Did you try to lure it out? Ask what else it wants? Maybe buy or trade your treasure back?" "No, not in 1,000 years. You couldn't pay us to go back there." He kind of laughed for a minute, and then he said, "We offered whatever it wanted before it left, but it just laughed. And even if we did track it all the way back to its lair, no human could survive a fight in those waters." That's right," I said. "So, you have to get your treasure back, and you're hoping I can do it, if I ask nicely. You really have no other way of handling this?" "No, sir," he said. "The creature's too much for us. We're only men. But with a demon at our side..." He clapped his hands, and the bodyguards came in from the other room. At this point, I was interested, but not thinking to the point where I would actually do it. I didn't like sailing. It's a little embarrassing to admit. I can now, but at the time, I couldn't swim. What's more, my voice usually worked on humans, but a lot of the time it wouldn't work quite so well on yokai. If there was any chance of a fight, I didn't really want to be up against a water yokai in its element at sea. But, lo and behold, Kinjo's men brought in a big, heavy chest. "Here's the deal," said Kinjo, and they opened it up. It was packed with gold. Get our treasure back, and it's all yours. And right on top of the chest, there was a bit of wood with a nice gold crest on it. Show that to any of my men on the mainland, and you can get whatever you want. Food, sake, passage on our ships, anything. No questions asked. Money was one thing, but this I could use. I was really curious about the whole thing. So, I agreed. Kinjo put me up in a nice room for the night, and the next day, I got to see the inside of a real pirate ship. What do you mean, the beginning of a sake addiction? I had drunk many, many times before. So, the second I got on board, I could tell things weren't going to be very good. There were far too many guards, and Kinjo had said no one but me and Shotaro had been allowed in or out since the theft. At one point, I saw 12 men lying around in the fetal position, and some of them were openly weeping. I had no idea about what the yokai had taken. Some kind of religious artifact? But the pirates didn't care about that stuff. What the hell was that valuable that this yokai could have stolen from them? I was shown into the main cabin and sat down on a nice silk cushion. Kinjo was incredibly agitated and said the same thing as before, that a yokai stole something irreplaceable and his legacy was at stake. He'd do anything to get it back, and so on. Now, I asked how he wanted to get this done, and Kinjo said, "We need to find the bitch and make her talk. He'll leave on the morning tide." I was a little surprised that the thief was female. I didn't know much about aquatic yokai at the time, so I was learning something new every day. Where'd you come across her in the first place? How did she get aboard? In the waters, half a day's sail northwest. We saw a lady drowning, so we fished her out. And I looked at him and I suddenly felt a little suspicious. You didn't think there was anything suspicious about finding a woman all the way out there, who was only just about to drown right as a ship happened by? The pirate said no. We didn't ask a lot of questions. The men took her below to clean her up. I didn't pay him any mind until I heard them start yelling. I didn't like that at all. The yokai obviously wasn't a defenseless human, but they thought she was. I got sarcastic. And she repaid your kindness by stealing your treasure. Something so important you won't let anyone else even know that it's missing. How could she do such a thing? Kinjo was so desperate he didn't even answer back. Here's what we'll do. The creature won't try the same trick again if she recognizes us. You'll board another ship during the night, and it'll leave port at dawn. Find her again, get her on deck, and keep the men away. Do whatever it is you did before, and make her bring our treasure back. It's our future. And at this point, I had been wondering and wondering and thinking and thinking and thinking. What could they have stolen that was so important? I was dying of curiosity. And so I asked, I'm sorry. I must, if I want to do the job right, I need to know, what is the treasure? They shook their heads, but I said, if I'm the only one who knows she took something, I have to be sure she gives the right thing back. Was it gold? Jade? Some kind of weapon? And it was the strangest thing. all at once, they just sort of embarrassed, all of them. They just hunched over. I had no idea what was going on. And then one of them finally said, "She took his son's treasure." I asked, "Yes?" And he said, "You're not understanding. When the boys took her below decks, they did want a little something, but she made the first move. She offered herself to every man who wanted, and most of them took her up on it. Then late that night she went around again one by one, and all of a sudden, a young man sat up in the back of the room, maybe 19, 20 years old, and he cried out in an incredibly tragic Shakespearean voice, 'She took our balls!' Now, a word of explanation. For those of you who are unaware, the Japanese language has a funny little turn of phrase where the word kintama, or treasure, is also a slang term for the family jewels. When that poor kid said it, everything clicked. The men on board were missing their literal testicles, and they wanted me to go and get them back. Can you imagine? Can you imagine my face? I was very invested. I normally wouldn't have agreed to do this kind of thing. I was into the reward, but I expected to be something... I mean, you know, your balls are important, but... Fuck. Your balls are important, but I was expecting something of intense importance, treasure, weaponry, an entire person who had been kidnapped or something. But no. They were missing their balls. How would I reattach them? When I accepted the job, I never thought that far ahead. It all sounds incredibly weird, but it is a real story. It actually happened. I promise. I genuinely promise you this is all true. This woman, who I came to know was a Sazai Oni, this type of sea snail who has lived long enough to evolve into a yokai. She would take the form of a beautiful lady, and then she would get on board and would seduce the crew and steal their balls. It's about as simply as I can put it. Now, some of you are asking for specifics, and I just want to make you aware. You mustn't Google it, okay? Please, for your own sanity, don't Google how does a Sazai Oni steal balls. I mean, maybe you want to know, but I certainly wouldn't. The guy who was piping up, he told me later on, she had a actual burlap sack over her shoulder, like evil Santa. This is my version of a Christmas story. She's like Krampus. But if you're on the naughty list, she steals your balls. Somehow it worked on all of them. She must have been so beautiful. You know, actually, knowing you lot, it kind of makes me understand those pirates a little bit better. Some of them, I imagine after a while, some of them must have sussed out what was going on, but maybe she was so beautiful they didn't care. How does that remind me of you? Well, you know, there's this demon I know who, if he ever got in close proximity with me, would probably suck my soul out, but I don't know. He's kind of bad. But again, I had to go and get their balls back, and then I figured they would know how to reattach them somehow. I don't know. Now, this made me laugh a lot. And the problem was, it turned out that the kid, the one who screamed, "I took our balls," that was Kinjo's only living son. He didn't want to be a pirate, and he spent most of his time studying until his father had made him go for his first proper sail. Most of his family were already dead, and adopting adult sons wasn't really a thing at that point in history, so this very powerful man had no one to carry on his bloodline. The two eligible males in the family no longer had their balls. I knew all of this because I was trying to stop laughing. And these men were so embarrassed, and they were so determined they needed to tell me the whole story, and so details kept spilling and spilling and spilling and spilling. And I calmed down. I knew I needed to make them feel better. So I decided, all right, I'll go ahead with it. And they snuck me out that night onto another ship. And they told the captain to do whatever he said. They sailed out into the morning to where the Oni had showed up before. And 5 hours later, we heard a cry for help. Right there in the water, exactly close enough to throw her a rope. A woman was splashing around like she was about to go under. Now, a side note, and this is very important, because there are, just like me, still around today, there are Sazai Oni at sea still. This is important. If someone is really actually drowning and their life is in real danger, typically they tend not to splash around. And they tend not to scream for help. They can't. So make sure you keep an eye out for each other when you're swimming, because if someone seems suspiciously in control and as though they don't have a load of water splashing around in their mouth, well, you know, just be careful. Now, of course, these men weren't thinking of that at all. Hold on a minute. Just adjusting my volume. I want to make sure I'm not clipping too bad. Da 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 da. I sound good? Thanks. I can see the little audio marker is going into the red occasionally, so I just want to make sure it's not fucking me up. That's good. Sounds perfect. Oh, thank you. Da 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 da. That seems good. Okay, so these men weren't thinking about that at all. To their credit, they did run and pull her out, and they really did try to make sure she was safe. But she was pretty, and she played up the whole damsel in distress act. "Oh, thank you. Oh, I was so scared." And it worked a charm on those pirates. I told them to stay back and not to touch her, but of course they wouldn't listen to me. Even with my power, I think hers was a little bit more effective on them. They refused to listen to me. I had to get serious, and I said, in as low and as loud of a voice as I could, "Stay back." And they stopped. And suddenly they realized that I wasn't human. Moreover, she realized that I wasn't human. and she turned her attention to me.
Well, hello, handsome. What brings you out here?
I was feeling a little seasick, and I was tired. I wasn't interested, even though she was very beautiful. I had a job to do, and I didn't really have the energy to engage with her in the way that she wanted. And so I said, as simply as I could, "You're going to return what you stole. Now." I wasn't at my best at all, and she was fairly powerful, and so my voice had no effect on her. She laughed.
Why do you care, my lord? Just let me have my fun. It's the least they deserve.
I could see the point, but my only concern is getting their things back. She started getting, that look.
Oh? Are you sure we can't work something out, my lord?
I actually, at that point in my life, could not believe that she was trying to seduce me. She started giving the men puppy dog eyes, and they started telling me to back off. And I told them, I reminded them, she's going to cut off your balls, guys. She's going to cut off your balls. But they didn't believe me, or they didn't listen, or maybe, just like you, they didn't care what the big sexy demon was going to do to them. They just wanted some. At that point, I was getting so tired. I wasn't in the mood to fight them all off, and so I pretended to change my mind. And I came up to her, acting like I was going to help her up. You know me. I can play that role pretty well. So I went to help her up. And then I knocked her down, pulled out my sword and pointed at her throat. If she knew that I was not human before, she definitely knew it now. How many of you have seen The Demon Hungers? You know I can pull my sword out of the ground. I can do it on a ship, too. I can do it anywhere. I can pull it out of midair if I wanted to. And in a ball of flame, it appears in my hand. And I hold it up to her. I pointed its tip right at her throat, and I looked her in the eye, and I said, "Show yourself." None of the men were brave enough to help. And she knew I was serious. And this is when the men suddenly realized, oh, maybe that wouldn't have been a very good idea. She did this kind of full body squish, just... And a moment later, she transformed from a beautiful woman into a giant, stinking snail. Slime all over the deck. And the men turned, and they ran away. She tried to make a break for it. It's a little silly, isn't it? You're about to run somewhere. You turn into a snail. My voice had worked. Show yourself.
Okay. Wait. Oh, no.
When she tried to run, I wasn't content to show her any mercy at all. And I stabbed through her lower body, and I pinned her into the deck. And I looked down, and I told her, uncomfortably close, "Go back to your shell. Grab everything you stole from those men intact, and return here with it." And now she was hurt, and she was scared. And so, once again, it worked. I pulled my sword out, and she dove back into the water for maybe 40 seconds. And then she jumped back onto the deck and dropped a bag at my feet. Thank fuck it was tied shut. She said,
"There's your damn treasure. I hope you're pleased with yourself. I'm leaving."
And I had a moment when I could have stopped her, cut her head off. But I didn't. I let her go. I'm not really sure why. Maybe I thought I was, maybe I thought she was right. Those pirates did deserve whatever they got. Maybe I just didn't want to deal with all the mess on the deck. Perhaps I was feeling like a sick fuck and I just appreciated the laugh I got out of it. But for whatever reason, I just told the captain to sail back to port. So when we got back, the men took me straight to Kinjo, and I handed over the bag of balls, the ball sack, if you will. Kinjo hands it to one of his men and tells him to go and try fixing up the others to see if it worked. But then some more big guys with swords came in, and Shotaro came in and shut the door and locked it. And I instantly knew, oh no, I see where this is going. And I asked, aren't you going to ask me if she's dead? Kinjo obviously didn't care. Is she? No, I said. But I hope she gets the rest of you. And the kid sat up in the back.
He said, "Father, you don't have to kill him. He could be useful."
He's dangerous, son. We have to get rid of him. No one will miss a nameless traveler. Now, his kid was pretty smart, actually. He said,
"But if he's a demon, how are you going to kill him? Can't he get us just like he got the yokai?"
"We'll get him first. He knows what happened. We'd have the whole country laughing at us." And then I started laughing. I said, yeah, it is very funny. But I would like my reward now. Kinjo got up, and he drew his sword. And unfortunately for him, I had just about had enough. Kinjo came straight at me first, and of course there wasn't enough room in that tiny little place for the rest of his men to surround me, and so, instead of standing a little chance, they stood none. And yes, I did really enjoy stabbing Shotaro. Once the dust settled, the men were all dead, except for Kinjo's son. I stood over him, and I pointed my sword, and I said, "Tell me why I shouldn't kill you." And he was terrified. Not only had everyone just been murdered right in front of him, but I had taken 6 souls in less than a minute, and my horns were starting to emerge from my head. Horrified, Kinjo's son dropped to his knees, and he started speaking in another language. It took me a minute to realize it was Latin, which the Portuguese missionaries had introduced just a few years before. And I was ready to kill him just for that. It could be useful to know that language. But he started babbling and babbling and babbling about how he could give me whatever he wanted. I could have all the resources of his father's clan. and he offered to take me anywhere in the mainland that I wanted to go, with all the gold his father had. But I wasn't impressed. I could, honestly, could have just killed him and taken it from myself anyway. And so I asked him, why should I trust you? I'm just a nameless traveler, aren't I? A nameless demon. And he said, and now he was getting very desperate. I remember this very well. The panic he felt.
You're not a nameless demon. You're...
And he had this fanatical look in his eye. The transition from fear to respect. Awe.
You're sublime. The demon of voices.
And I shrugged. And I raised the sword.
No, you're right.
I stopped him. But he kept talking.
No. You're transcendent. I'll warn other humans, I'll warn them all to beware. The voice demon. Vox demonium.
And I stopped for a moment. Interesting. What does that mean? I asked, with a smile.
It means voice demon in the language of the church. But I could call you anything. Anything. Whatever titles. Whatever you would like. Spare me and you'll have an ally for as long as my clan exists.
I didn't think about it too much. But it did sound interesting. Vox demonium. Voice demon in the language of the church. Now, of course, Japanese isn't my native language either. So I let it slide. And I let him live. He was a follower of mine, and he went off into the world and told many people, not of what I looked like or any information that could hinder me, but as word spread, you're aware of how language changes. Demonium, demonium, demonium. Conversations between the missionaries, conversations with native Japanese people. The name would shift and it would change. And then, suddenly, over the next few years, every time I went through a village, I would hear stories. Vox Akuma. The demon of voices. And the rest, as they say, is history. And that's the story. After that, like I said, the cycle of my life would continue, traveling from place to place, moving in on bandits, taking their souls, taking their money, having my fun, and moving on before things became dangerous. And before I really had any interest in enjoying my time spent with humans, I enjoyed that feeling of mystery. And even though I didn't, and still don't, know my real name. Vox Akuma became the de facto calling when someone thought I was nearby. And I liked it, and so I stuck with it. Anyone have any questions? Stop telling me my name's Steve. My true name, I'd like to imagine it's important, but I wish I knew what it was. What happened to the boy? Well, like I said, the boy went off into the world, and he would bring me resources, he would allow me safe passage where he had power, and he would tell everyone of my power. And people were scared of me before, but now, specifically, this melding of languages became something that was uniquely terrifying for people. It almost made the fear of me somewhat worldwide. The missionaries who spoke in the language of the church enough to have named me Vox feared the devil. Imagine that, right? Holy men, presumably, with the power to exorcise and destroy demons, feared this one enough to talk of him and share his legacy as far as they could. And one day, what I would really like to be able to do is to track down writings and artwork that mention me, because there are many. Not just in Sengoku and subsequent era Japan, but also in other parts of the world. There are plenty of native classical paintings, writings, and so on that make mention of me, and in all of them, that name spread. In whichever country or culture I was spotted, the name would spread. Vox Akuma. So, of course, when I introduced myself to you, I thought, why change it? I like it. If I find some, I'll make sure to share it with you. Thank you, Kendra, for the super. Thank you, Leo Shah and Danya. I told Kenshin another name. I did, yes, but I don't remember what it was. He had heard of the voice demon, but he didn't know it was me. Well, until he did know what it was, and then we had our falling out. Look forward to hearing more of your travels. Yes, I've got lots to tell you. So this was, in comparison, sort of a lighter story to the other two. I don't particularly have a very sad emotional reaction to much of what is said in here. I don't really care for Kinjo or San or Shotaro or anyone else involved in the story, which is probably why I had such an easy time taking them out. Sometimes I think about, not specifically the Sazayoni, but I wonder what it would be like if I could have a better relationship with other demons like me. I've told you before, I try not to interact with many of them because I don't agree with the way they do things. They are amoral to me. How could I pretend to care for humans when the people I associate with kill them and steal their balls regularly? But I am lonely. and I know I could never enjoy something close and physical with a human, at least not without risking them terribly. That's true. No, I did convert onigiri, and my parents too. But that doesn't make us perfect. There's no such thing as a demon that doesn't kill, or at the very least not a demon that isn't adjacent to death. For demons, it's you either kill or you waste away. Most of them choose to live. Myself included, although I think I'm one of the only ones who does that with, the regret that I do. Jean Surukula, thank you very much. Yes, this story happened, like I said at the beginning, this story happened quite a while ago. The mid 1500s, 1555. Around about then, anyway. Spino, of course. Glad I could share it. How do I remember all of this? Well, there's lots I don't remember. You know me, I'm a very forgetful person. But there are certain things I do remember. And these are all very significant parts of my life. I mean, that's my name. Last time, when I told the story of Uesugi Kenshin, that was someone I loved. And of course, we all know how much I care about onigiri. Some of this stuff I don't think I'll ever forget. Youngest possible age is now 468. Well, of course, I didn't come onto the planet as a baby, did I? No, I'm quite a bit older than you think. Quite a bit older than I think, I imagine. Maybe one day I'll remember. Maybe one day my parents will tell me. But I think they've gotten to the sort of age where the specifics of this kind of thing don't really matter to them all that much. I imagine they've probably stopped counting how old they are, and they're just living because they're having fun. And whenever I seem to show concern, what's my exact age? What's my real name? They just laugh. You'll know, they say. You'll know. I hope I do one day. Because they say that names have meaning, right? You look up your name and you understand that in linguistics it has some kind of purpose. We all know what Vox Akuma means, but whatever my real name is, I don't know what that means. Maybe it's silly and it doesn't really matter, but I would like to know. So, Cello, thank you. Misty. No, Misty, they had not invented pogging in 1555. Lily, thank you very much. The silliest thing I've ever done with my voice. The silliest thing I've made people do. Oh, gosh. Oh, there's a lot. I mean, a lot of what's coming to mind are moments I've shared with you. This is definitely up there. My voice got me into a situation where I wanted to steal back the balls of a whole group of pirates. After this incident, no more yokai eating balls would appear. No. I didn't have the power to destroy Sazayoni as a species entirely, but I'd imagine perhaps they would have tried some alternative tactics. And if any of them saw me coming, perhaps they would run back to the water. But like I said, they still exist, so if you're ever at sea, and you see someone who seems like a bit of a bad actor pretending to drown, maybe it's better to let sleeping dogs lie, eh? Don't want to lose your balls now, do you? Whatever your name is, I love you. Thank you, Millie. I think sometimes I wonder if I wouldn't have felt so lost if I knew what I was actually called. It's like, I don't know. When you look at famous historical figures like gods or demons, I know it's because we get their names from the way that humans have perceived them and encountered them. Like me, Vox Akuma, voice demon. Anyone who has encountered the voice demon, demon of voice, of course, it makes sense. It's the same thing with other names. But I wonder if I knew what my real one was. Perhaps I would know more of what my purpose is, because remember, at the time, I was just living, wandering, going from place to place. It was fun, and I did it to stay alive and be somewhere that wasn't the underworld. But if I knew truly who I was, maybe I might have been a bit more assuredly seeking something. Because after a while, I think I found that purpose in my kindred from the time, right? I was without purpose, and I couldn't be this hedonistic, violent man wandering around and just living. I needed something to work towards. And since then, and since everything happened and I lost them, my purpose became looking for that again. And if I ever found connection again, which I did, when I lost it, I would just go to look for it again. And I think it gives some credence to why I am so afraid. Why I've been, at times, so afraid of losing you. With a lack of purpose, actively seeking one, the purpose I found in being a caregiver, a guardian, a people pleaser. It became the only thing that made me happy, and I had never been used to the panic that I would feel when I felt I was in danger of something happening again. I had never felt that while being looked at by so many people. And so I'm grateful that in spite of that, now, that I can help you understand how hard it can be for me sometimes. But how in spite of all of it, you still love me in your own way. No, don't worry, I'm not saying goodbye. We're streaming later with members. We're going to play some RuneScape. I'm not going anywhere, don't worry. All I need is for you to stay. Toya, thank you very much. Akko, Black Crown, Roku. Oh. You need need to know the name of a demon to summon them. Perhaps that's why I haven't experienced that and I am free. Interesting. I never thought of it in that way, but it's clever. Kathy, Aura, love you too. Komaki, Yuki, Puppy. Can I sense who's calling me? A little, but... yeah. Jenny, thank you. Luna. Love to know your real name sometime. Yep, so would I. But as far as I'm aware, the only two people who know seem to believe that one day I will just know it. So I'll keep doing what I'm doing, and then maybe one day I'll figure it out. Am I happy with my current life? Sort of. Sort of. Mostly. I think I was having this... I mentioned that my dad came to visit. He'd gotten the sense that I wasn't doing very well, and so we had a talk. And one of the things we talked about was the ways that we are able to find happiness. Because, especially for demons, it can become very difficult. Really, for anything that's immortal, it can become very difficult to find an exact purpose, because if you are capable of living forever, it's very difficult to become unmotivated. If you have all the time in the world, why rush? When the only thing you need to do is kill to survive. Why rush, right? But I had a different experience when I founded my clan. Do you recall when I first debuted and you saw the film, the short, very short, that I called The Death of Vox Akuma? And it mentioned that I would never fall behind on my duties. I was the ruler of a clan, and that, while being a way to spend time with humans, was also my work. And I think that at the time, although I didn't know it, I was forming this intense connection to where if I do not work and if I do not perform my duties as is expected of me, the link between work and performance and happiness becomes impossible to separate. And I think I can see that now, to where, yeah, a symbiotic relationship with the clan, but also with what I need to do to run it. And so I think what I'm realizing is that when I perceive myself as having done something to harm my work, in this case, the way that I make you feel, it affects me a little more than it should. And I don't mean that I shouldn't care, because I do. But I think it affects me to the point where it is somewhat debilitating. You understand? I feel as though I must care so much, or else I will lose it again, and again, and again. And this is about as perfect of a relationship with humans as I've ever had. You're the only humans I can see that I can't harm, because you're so far away. I think this is the case for many people, but when they are criticized, criticism can tend to seem much, much louder than positivity. And I think that when I mentioned that the day before I did my Suika speedrunning stream, I mentioned that I hadn't been doing very well over the past couple of days, and it was for a lot of reasons. But I think at the end of that day, after I'd had my conversation with my father, I'd figured a lot out about why I was having a hard time. I realized that my response to just a few small voices is a lot more horrifying for me than it is for the average person. And I've said this before. I mentioned it on when I was chatting with Mary this morning. But when you were offering me some constructive criticism and wanted me to try warning you if I thought things might get out of hand. Maybe it's because I wasn't reading it right, or maybe I was particularly unlucky with what social media was putting in front of me, but most of what I saw did feel quite vicious. And what you might remember is that, well, I can tend to respond to these things. Do you remember when that diplomat came to my castle and told me to merge my borders and give up my flag? I told him to go fuck himself. I was a lot more like that back in the day. Since everything went wrong, I've tended to err more on the side of flight than fight. So, all I wanted to do was to reiterate that I'm grateful to you for being patient and understanding that I may have more of a difficult time with this stuff than other people. But I feel happier now because I can recognize that I do hear those voices that are more vitriolic, more selfish, more abusive. They are much louder, and sometimes that noise is hard to turn down to hear what really matters. When I said I didn't want to stop, and when I was fighting back, I felt like I really was fighting people who didn't want what was best for me. People who would have wanted me to, like I told you earlier, merge my borders and give up what made us, us. So I'm really glad you understand. And I will never pick a fight with an individual among you. I will never make it a big problem. But I've been wanting to say for a while that I apologize for what I did do wrong, and I'm grateful that you forgave me. But I think it's strange. I've never felt like I've deserved something like this, but I kind of want to ask. Well, many of you already have. But I kind of feel like I deserve an apology from a small few people, but I can't expect that. It's difficult when things are inevitably so personal for us, isn't it? I don't think other people have this kind of back and forth. Not many of them, anyway. But anyway. All I wanted to say was I'm grateful for you, and even if my lack of a name, my lack of purpose has led me down this rabbit hole that has spat me out into being all powerful and scary on one side, but quite supple and vulnerable on the other side, I'm glad that you've come to give me that purpose, regardless of which side I choose to show. Thank you. So, before I get too emotional, I think I had better go and take a bit of a rest. Christmas is just a couple weeks away, and I have gotten no smaller. I'm feeling a little down, because I would love to get to spend Christmas with my family. But if I get to spend it with you, I think that would be okay too. So we'll see. I'm rhyming. Some people said they really liked the rhymes in Plastic Cow, and the thing is, the rhymes are very simple. I think I rhymed moo with two, and I can't remember what else I might have rhymed. I'd really like to do more streams where I've written something, because writing Plastic Cow was a really great experience. And you know, well, I have a lot of thoughts on some of the stuff that I wrote about in Plastic Cow. I have a lot of thoughts about what I would change, and, you know, I know what I meant by that. I kind of want to talk about it, but I also kind of don't. I kind of want to be like Neil Breen when they asked what's the meaning of the little baby heads in the desert. He said, "Oh, I leave it up to the audience, the meaning of the little heads in the desert." But I also want to talk about it a little bit, but I also don't. You know, I like seeing your interpretations. I loved seeing the way you analyzed it. I thought it was amazing. Could do it in membership. That's a nice idea. Well, we have membership tonight, don't we? I might delay it a little bit so that I can have some more time to relax. But yeah, maybe we can. We'll see. Tokito, SSE, Na, thank you. April, Remy, thank you. Didier, Anne, SSE, thank you. And Nico, thank you very much. Mind-chan, we have a saying over here that birthday wishes come true. Oh, it's your birthday. You have a wish that I'll get better and better. Thank you. I'm sure I will. Rachel, thank you. Jenny, thank you. You know, something that's very exciting for me, sort of on the subject of what I was talking about with how I'm realizing my time spent in the castle has changed me. Last year, I shared a lot about my mental health with you. Sometimes I wonder if I had shared too much, but looking at the impact and seeing the people who, based on what I had learned about myself, have now sought out diagnoses for themselves, makes me know that it was worth it. And since then, I've been on a pretty hefty waiting list, and apparently, very soon, I will be finally able to start some pretty serious therapy. It's available online, so I don't have to worry about if I look like this, or if by the time I get it, I suddenly start looking like this again. And I don't know if any of you have heard of EMDR, but it's exciting for me because apparently it's very effective at sort of reworking the sort of false connections that your brain can make when you've been through something really bad. And I'm looking forward to it because I think it can be quite limiting to get scared. think it'd be quite limiting to get scared and then not be able to see what's actually going on. But there is a little part of me that wonders, I don't know, it's pretty stupid. It's pretty stupid. I'm kind of the opinion that while you definitely don't need it, works of art that come from a place of hurt can be incredibly powerful. They're the ones that I love the most. Real, thoughtful pieces that come straight from someone's heart. Maybe I'm paranoid. But I'm a little worried that if it's too effective, if I lose what makes me hurt, maybe I won't be able to connect with that part of myself quite as well. You know? And I certainly don't believe that anyone deserves to wind up like Vincent van Gogh, who created some of the most beautiful works of art we know of, but at the cost of his sanity and his ear. But then I think back, well, if my life and my purpose and my job, whether it's running a clan or trying to entertain people, if that's so irrevocably attached to the way that I feel happy, well, maybe detaching that will allow me to connect more with myself than I ever have. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting journey, and I'm looking forward to telling you about it, because you helped me get there. I've been lucky enough, and let me be very clear, privileged, incredibly privileged, to have your support so that I can pay to be seen and treated in a better way and sooner. Everyone who suffers like I do deserves help. And I am immensely privileged for being able to get that treatment for myself. It was a part of that that made me really want to do my charity stream for SAVE earlier this year. So I wanted to share some of that privilege with people who weren't able to go as far as I could. But yeah, I'm very lucky. Very lucky. And I do owe it to you. I hope that if in some way I can pay that thanks forward, that would truly make me happy. And I hope it makes you happy too. Thank you, Rachel, Fish, Lumos, Rebecca, Lulu, Tian Tian, Tara Tara, Yana, and Tutsi. Thank you. It was confusing, I agree, and pretty frustrating and confusing for me too. I apologize for my part in making it a little more difficult to understand, but I'm glad, I'm really glad. It feels vindicating and very, very cathartic that so many of you recognize that that situation was pretty unfair on me too. I think that was the hardest part. Was feeling so wronged and so, you know, I don't like to say that I felt attacked in a situation where I had done something wrong, and I definitely had. But beyond being held accountable, I think that so many people, like I've said, definitely did see it as an opportunity to scare me into stopping. People who didn't want to know the truth, people who didn't want to know me for all of me, and just wanted the old Vox back. I'm still the old Vox. I'm still the same person I've always been. This, believe it or not, is just what it looks like when I'm happy. If my happiness is offensive to you, well, you better stop watching because you're going to get a whole lot more offended. Cello, thank you. Fern, Nyanya, Dalin, Sunny, Kay, and Endug. Alright. Tarushka, thank you. I'm getting pretty emotional now, so I better stop. But thank you for a wonderful stream. Thank you for a nice post-story chat. And I will see you all much, much later. That's going to do it for me for today. I'm going to see you all in just a few hours for a member stream where we're going to relax. And then next week, who knows? There's all sorts on the horizon and I can't wait to share it with you. Thank you.